So last time we talked about this particular oil, do you remember? It was a holy basil. And what we noticed here and what we discussed was phenols. So we started to talk about a little more deeply with this brown chunk of the pie chart right here, and that's phenols. And we discussed how whenever we see this color dominating or even being anything larger than 20-30%, you really want to watch out for the safety recommendation because they can be, although very good at antimicrobial action, they're great at that, but they're very pungent. And safety risks could be the dermal irritation here, and sensitisation. So you want to be careful with oils like this. Now, I wanted to continue on that and keep talking about safety because a lot of people in our aromatherapy community, schools, books mention phenols, but there is a whole other group that needs just as much or even more attention, but it's not talked about. And so I want to continue on that note and today introduce this very special oil. Can you guess what it is? So it's aldehydes. I want to be talking about aldehydes. Now, in essential oils, we don't have a lot of different aldehydes that come across in significant percentages in essential oils. So what I would really like you to start noticing is that it's very useful to remember just a few of these chemical constituents in each group that are very repetitive rather than remembering essential oils. Because maybe 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, there wasn't so many oils on the market, so it was easy to remember like 15 or 30, maybe even 50 oils and know how to use them, although not really know how to explain why you chose, I don't know, a holy basil for acne and not something less, skin sensitizing. Why would you do that? But today we have hundreds of essential oils on the market. So it really becomes much easier, not to mention much more professional, and much more accurate if you're actually remember these specific chemical constituents. So one here, the aldehyde that we're going to talk about here is Cinnamaldehyde. So it's a specific one. It's an aromatic aldehyde. Now, as I said, I will not expect, and I really believe that we don't need to go a lot into chemistry, but what we do need to know as aromatherapists is the vocabulary. So notice if you feel uncomfortable or thinking, oh, she's gone too far, because in this lesson, I want to be very specific and I want you to get the right vocabulary as well. That is going to help you distinguish yourself from just a random person liking essential oils in the book and somebody who actually knows what they're talking about and sounds like they know what they're talking about. So you need to be able to use these terms adequately, correctly, and place them where they should be placed. So knowing how to pronounce aromatic aldehydes and where they are is that. You do not need to know what bonds are in there. I mean, you can, but it's not going to make a difference on how you apply it. But it's going to help you explain why an aromatic aldehyde is different than, a monoterpene aldehyde. It's just simple vocabulary, okay? So this specific one, usually when we look at oils that have a lot of aldehydes, we're thinking of something like citral. So we're thinking of oils like lemongrass, like Mei Chang. So oils that have this lemony smell but are not lemons usually have a lot of citral in them. And that is the most common aldehyde to talk about, and we will talk about it next time. I wanted to introduce them here, but this is not it. So that's the trick. When you are looking at these specific groups, you want to be able to recognize, So for aldehydes, it's quite important that I know which one I'm talking about. And it's actually just 3 or 4 that you need to know, 3 tops, and you're going to cover many oils with that. We go in depth in the next level in one of my courses about that. So which groups have which chemical constituents that you should pay attention to, and then break them down for you. So next level would be an excellent course if you want to deepen that knowledge in this kind of setting, in this kind of essential oil architecture approach. So the first thing when I see an oil like this, regardless of which aldehyde it is, I want to recognize that it is an aldehyde, and I want you to be able to connect that with safety. So when we are talking about aldehydes and safety, it's interesting that not only can they be sensitizers, just like phenols, they can sensitize the skin, but they can also cause mucous membrane irritation. So like irritating the nose, the eyes, the respiratory tract. So if you inhale oils that have any of these aldehydes I mentioned in too high concentration, you can have your client have not only a skin reaction, but also a mucous membrane reaction. Another thing that nobody talks about, or very little is talked about, is that some aromatic aldehydes that we find in essential oils, and we find them frequently, like this one, is linked to nausea and headaches. So if you have a poorly ventilated spaces, a small space, or if you just have somebody who's very sensitive, they can get nauseated and a headache by being exposed to too much to this oil. And now if you come back and you see which aldehyde this is, cinnamaldehyde, so you can guess in which oils this one is present just by looking at the name. And I'm not telling you which this one is yet, but one of the oils that has this is cinnamon. And during, holiday season, December season, I find a lot of people putting cinnamon in spaces that are public, like their stores and situations like that. So think about it. If this particular oil, that any oil that has a large quantity of this particular chemical constituents is linked to nausea and headache, do you really want this to be consistently, diffused in air? I don't think so. Also, you don't know who's going to come. It might be a person who is even more sensitive to this. So not only do you want to use it in low doses, you want to use it in, not so frequently, maybe just a little bit, as in not every day. So this is something I felt we really need to talk about in this series because, as I said, phenols, everybody knows, most people are introduced to phenols as a group to pay attention to, but I haven't heard many people talk about how important it is to pay attention to oils rich in aldehydes. And this specific one is an aromatic aldehyde. So now that I had this introduction that I really wanted to point out about safety, I want to show you a little bit how to read this oil. So if I would look at this oil just at the first glance, I would right away say, oh, this oil is very rich in aldehyde. So there are several things we need to pay attention to. Number one, safety. So if this was a client that perhaps is interested in using this oil in some kind of a blend, whether it's topical, whether it's in air, I can then say some of these safety regulations that I shared with you right now. But also, if this is somebody who was interested in buying an oil or product that contains this kind of a lot of green in the pie chart, I would also warn them to maybe go for something that is, I would ask them, what effect do you want? And perhaps start with something with less safety concerns. And then when you are skilled in aromatherapy, build to it. Okay, so first I would always warn a person about using this kind of essential oil. Then I would go into depth and I would say, oh, this is an aromatic aldehyde and it's cinnamaldehyde. I would already have a few ideas of which essential oil this is. And this tells me a little bit more about the smell. So whenever you see an oil with a lot of aldehydes, regardless of which one it is in essential oils, it's an intense smell. So I'm not talking about a high note. I'm talking about a smell that is very intense, that is something you will definitely notice. So for example, if you're going to put 1 drop of an oil that has aromatic aldehyde and 1 drop of something like when we talked about, remember, lemon or grapefruit, you are not going to really smell an essential oil such as lemon or grapefruit with this. You would need a few more drops. So let's say something to 3 to 5 drops to be able to notice it, because this one is very intense smell. So that combined with the information that you know that if you do a high dose, if you cross that bridge of being too high and too intense, it creates nausea. And now you know that the smell is already intense. That tells you just how little you should be using this essential oil in a diffuser, for example, or anything that's going to be smelled. It has to be dosed very well. So after I see that and give them all the information about safety, I would tell them that this is actually probably a pleasant smell, because aldehydes, if dosed correctly, they are pleasant and they have this intense note. So it's easy to use them to make something smell. So for example, if you put a lemon essential oil in any product, that's going to be very light. You're going to need to use a lot of essential oil to make something smell like lemon essential oil, for example. And it also is going to evaporate so quickly, it will not have the lasting effect. Whereas when you use essential oils that have aldehydes in them, any kind of aldehydes, it has, you need to use less oil because it's such an intense smell. And you also, it's a longer lasting smell. So you will see that a lot of people frequently use oils rich in aldehydes in their products for this reason, which is actually concerning. So now I hope that with this essential oil architecture series, we are putting those things into light and into perspective. Having said that, aldehydes have a very intense smell is one of the reasons why a lot of people confuse it for a high note, but that's not really true. So regarding the smell, you can tell your client that this particular oil has a middle note and a high intensity aroma with a tendency to go lower. If I would use this oil, I would definitely blend it with high and low notes. But it does take some knowledge because, as I said, of all the safety considerations. Plus, when you have an oil that is this singular in its chemistry, it's good to really be good at essential oil architecture to know how to blend it correctly. So regarding how to use it, if you are a trained aromatherapist and know how to handle oils with this level of safety considerations, then these are some of the ways you can use it. Again, it's a very good, just like we had here with the phenols, it's very good antimicrobial, antimicrobial properties, also insecticidal, so it repels all sorts of things. You will see, you can click in Dropsmart and see exactly what, so that you're working on the right insect, not just randomly hoping it will work for the one that you want. Anti-inflammatory, so you will see with oils such as cinnamon that has aromatic aldehydes in them. They are sometimes in remedies for pain and inflammation, but I would definitely be super careful with that. Are you ready? Which oil do you think it is? Now, before I reveal which oil it is, here we can see that the safety things that I mentioned are all mentioned here as well. So see, it's 0.05%, the maximum dermal level recommended. So it aligns with what I was talking about. And the oil that it is, it's cassia. The reason I wanted to talk about cassia is because it's often confused and sold as cinnamon essential oil. Okay. And in its structure, it's similar. So I want to compare that. I want to take you that next step and show you the comparison because because you'll be in a situation definitely when somebody wants to sell you cinnamon as cassia, and you should at least know that it's a different oil. So here I already prepared, and you can do this on your own time. Just go to your Dropsmart account and compare oils if you are a premium user. And here I will compare cassia with cinnamon bark and cinnamon leaves, so you can see. The reason I made this connection is also to connect between the difference between phenols and aldehydes, and you see how they come together. Like cinnamon leaf has a lot of phenols, and particularly this is again eugenol. And then cinnamon bark essential oil has a lot of aromatic aldehydes, and it's the cinnamon aldehyde that we are talking about. So does cassia. Now, of course, each oil, depending on your provider and depending on when they were doing this, it has a ratio between 60 to 90% of cinnamon aldehyde. But in any case, it is a very alarming amount of this component that we have to be very careful with. So I wanted to show you this. And then cinnamon leaf will naturally smell more like clove and also maybe even more like holy basil than cinnamon because of the chemical constituents. So as you see, the thing is what I would like you to take away with the Essential Oil Architecture series is that in many ways, it really is easier to just learn about these few chemical constituents that are repetitive rather than hundreds of oils. Because as I said at the beginning, if this was 10 years ago, maybe, but now we have hundreds of essential oils, and it's just easier to understand how to use them correctly, how to use them efficiently, how to blend efficiently, how to express creatively what you want by knowing a few of these chemical constituents. And I break them down, especially in my next level course. So I here want to quickly show you the safety. Okay. So as I said, I'm really concerned why more aromatherapists are not talking about aldehydes, because with phenols, although they are, important to look 0.6% is the maximum dermal use recommended. And here it's 0.07 and 0.05 because it's an aromatic aldehyde. So it is a difference. It's a huge difference. So we need to put awareness into this to our students, to our clients, to our followers out there. However it is that you're sharing aromatherapy, we need to start talking about aldehydes and how to use them properly. I see too many products out there using aldehydes, as if they're apples or something much safer. And as I said, even if they use them at relatively moderate doses, you may overuse it because you're using it too many times per day or in a day, and people just might be sensitive to it. somebody who's pregnant might enter into your room, or somebody who's allergic. This is something to pay attention to. To wrap this up and to put it all in a neat package, when you're using essential oil architecture, you can very quickly see what we are talking about. So as soon as you see oils in these colors, you can say, oh, okay, I gotta watch out for these ones. You can inform your clients, your followers, your students adequately that, these are oils to be more careful with. You might not want to use them at skin at all. Regarding these with the aldehydes, whether aromatic or otherwise, you might want to rethink how you use them in spaces as well, especially small spaces that are not well ventilated, like a bathroom. I see a lot of people putting cinnamon oil in the bathroom with no windows. That is not a smart idea in my perception. So you need a level of knowledge and experience with aromatherapy to use oils like this safely and wisely. So I really encourage you not to follow recipes, because if you look at recipes, they use these oils so loosely. I really deeply suggest that you use essential oil architecture to make your choices. Not only are you going to make smarter choices because it comes from solid evidence and logic, but also you're going to make more informed choices. You're going to have more creative choices, and you will not need to study hundreds of oils. You are going to learn very strategically, first, what do these colors mean, but then which chemical constituents is worth paying attention to. And that's something I share in my next level. Of course, we go into those specific groups that are meaningful for aromatherapists and specific chemical constituents that are worth paying attention to. And I tell you exactly what to pay attention to, which chemical constituents and what they're for. And then we have exercises. So next level would definitely be the next level of learning and deepening the foundations of essential oil architecture, because that's what essential oil architecture was born from anyway, from what I share in my next level program. So next time, what we're going to be doing is another oil with not aromatic aldehyde, but aldehydes, so that you see it in a different context. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you and appreciate your dedication to this. And that's it for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.